Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 4th episode of Everyone's Got Shit. I am so excited today to have one of my best friends in the entire world on this episode of Everyone's Got Shit. Everyone, I always say everyone introduce yourself. No, Maisie, introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, I'm Maisie. I went to high school with Alex, and I have the pleasure of knowing her for...
It's been like what? That was 4 years, and then... We've been out for like 3 years, so 7 years. She goes to Princeton, that's why she could do the math.
Do the math really quick.
She knew the math to that.
I'm a student athlete at Princeton. I play women's water polo, and what else in your introduction? I'm a Pisces.
Let's get down to the important stuff. She's a Pisces. What's your moon and rising or whatever?
Virgo rising, Cancer moon.
You know that. We could go into your co-star reading for the day.
I think it said something bad, so no,
it's
thank
okay.
you.
Well, the good thing we have the podcast. We're just really going to cheer up your spirits with that. So yes, Maisie is a student athlete at Princeton, and that's what this episode is largely going to be about. It's going to be about your journey with water polo, what kind of got you to this very accomplished phase of life. But also I think it's important to talk about like the struggles and the stress of being a student athlete, not even like definitely, especially in college, but like the high school we went to was like insane. And like, I just like watching the things that you had to do stressed me out. Like when you were like, yeah, I was at school at 6 a.m, I was like, oh my God, that sounds so horrendous.
Something I'll never forget, like driving to practice at 6 a.m. and there was unfortunately a fatal accident / homicide on the street on the way to practice. Yes, on the way to practice.
Of course.
And it was just nobody else was awake yet, and it was
everyone has a missed call from Maisie. We're like, why are you calling us at 5:45 in the morning? She's like, there's a homicide.
Yeah, it was scary. But
Santa Ana. We miss her. We love her.
Always an adventure.
Always an adventure driving to school. The day that I got my license was the best day of my life because I didn't have to hear my mom complain about that drive. I hate this drive.
Yeah.
We had a good time, though. She'd pull into Smart and Final across the street. She's like, I got Soul Cycle. Get out. All right. But anyway, Maze, so that was a little bit about our high school experience. If you guys were curious, it was a very good time. But I think we should just dive right into your shit. I'm excited today, as everyone knows now, it's going to be about, like, water polo and student athlete. But to kind of, like, pivot away from, like, super, like, this is, like, you got, like, some deep shit with this. But, like, you know, like losing a parent and a parent going through cancer. Like, okay, let's take a break from that.
Yeah.
As I said, this is for everyone, for every walk of life. And I'm excited to get into something a little bit new here. So, Maze, I think we should just start with the beginning of your water polo journey. When it started, how, why.
Well, I was a soccer player. Obviously, like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I was doing like travel club team, but it's just so embarrassing. My feet really started to hurt, and I would complain about running all the time because I had bunions at 10.
Naturally.
And between that and the fact that I was just a little too aggressive for a defender in soccer, my dad threw me into swimming, where I was a pretty good swimmer because I did junior lifeguards and I like loved it, but I kept failing like the breaststroke section, so I kept getting held back into like the kiddie pool, and I was really frustrated with that. Shout out Mission Viejo Nadadores. Did a lot of swim meets there. And then finally my dad played water polo at USC for a little bit, and he pushed me into the sport. Shout out Dave. Pushed me into the sport, and that was, gosh, 11 years ago.
Jeez. Like junior high?
Like elementary school. I started like, because 12 and under. So 10U, 12U. So I started playing when I was like not competitively, but like learning to play it when I was like 9 or 10.
Yeah. And
like balancing that with soccer and swimming. And then I kind of gave everything else up by the time it turned like 11.
Yeah.
So
full on water polo.
Were
you, when Dave like just like get in the pool, were you happy about it? Or you're like, no, I'm a soccer girl?
No, I definitely hated running. And I complained and cried every single day. So I was extremely happy, but I did not like swimming, like swim
just
meets.
like swimming, yeah.
But I did like the culture around the swim meets, like the eating like the ramen.
They're so fun. Swim meets are the best time
Except
ever.
for when you actually had to swim.
Oh yeah, that like 30 seconds you had to like get in and get out, but then the best was like, all right, lunchtime.
Yeah, like you're just sitting around with your ramen and like playing cards with your friends. So I guess I liked that, but water polo was definitely my calling.
Your sport, your calling, definitely. At what point? Okay, so you started around 10. At what point did you feel it start to get pretty serious?
I guess when I switched from my first club. So I switched from it's what turned into Alliance, but it was called Capo Valley Aquatics Club, and I like learned how to like the basics and stuff, how to swim there when I was 9 and 10 and 11, 12. And then I switched to Laguna Beach. And that's when it started to feel like more competitive, and you know, because you have like people like Olympians coaching and all like there was like the Stanford mafia of all these dads that played water polo at Stanford that were like coaching all of us at age group. And I think out of that group, I know at least 10 girls in those 2 teams that I was on there that are all playing Division 1.
Damn.
So it's like that's when it started to feel really serious, like actually going to practice 4 days a week and tournaments every weekend. And I remember like my coach was mad at me for going on my 8th grade trip to DC. And I was like, I can't, like, I like went and I asked my social studies teacher if I could go swim in the pool at the hotel. And she was like, no.
He's like, I gotta practice.
So that's when it started to like really pick up.
Oh my God. They wanted you to swim on your 8th grade trip.
Yeah, to DC.
That's insane. And especially too, and you can talk more about this, like Orange County, like culture just with sports is insane, but especially water polo. Like there are so many clubs down here.
Well, and it's because it's such a niche sport from the West Coast, and I'll talk about this later, like being at Princeton, like nobody has even like ever seen a water polo game. My roommate's from England, shout out Autumn. Since she had like never heard of the sport, like she never seen a game and like barely like seen it on the Olympics. So it's like but like here it's like as common as AYSO. Like you just grow up playing it. Like I remember like when it's CIF finals, everybody is going to pack Woolet and sit in the stands and watch it. So it's definitely like a different culture out here versus and combine that with like the intense parents from
so intense so intense. But it's funny that you say that like about Princeton, because going to UW, like they know what it is, but they are like people would be like, oh, like were you friends with the football players? Like and they were like, were they the cute boys? I was like, yeah, of course, but like we're like the water polo team. Like they were like, everyone was like, what? Like, what high school did you go to? But it's funny. It's like a completely different like mentality out here.
Oh yeah,
with water polo.
But like you look at the top rankings, and I will say like Princeton's lucky enough, like we are a top 25, and we're like climbing.
It has
up.
a great team.
We have a great team and a great program, but you know there are like maybe 7 teams on the East Coast that we play. Yeah, like 7, and then there's Indiana and Michigan, and then the rest is California. Yeah. Like it's.
Which is why you're home.
Which is why I'm home, thankfully.
For a tournament. Here we go. Well, then let's dive right into high school, I think. High school water polo. Ooh, I love the cringe. Because it was funny because, like, I got to watch, like, your ups and downs for a little bit. You definitely know more than I do. But this was severe. Like, this is, I think, where, like, the shit really starts to, like, pile up.
Oh, yeah.
So the high school we went to, Mater Dei, has one of the best water polo programs in the whole country.
Yeah.
And I think I want to start with, so at what point, because you're from about 45 minutes away from Mater Dei, what made you decide Mater Dei?
So my middle school had this like table booth set up of like meet the high schools, and like everybody from my middle school goes to J. Sarah or Santa Margarita because it's closer. It makes more sense. But I went to the Mater Dei table, and Patrick Murphy was there working the booth. And my neighbors, the Lavians, were just going to Mater Dei because Nick was playing water polo there. Yeah. And Caroline was a grade above me and was about to go. So we went and like talked to Patrick Murphy, who's this little 7th grader coming up to me asking me about like water polo. Nice. But he like knew exactly like who the water polo players were, and like knew my neighbor, and that like he was getting his cast off right in time for CIF semis. And like it was pretty impressive that a coach of like a massive football powerhouse school and a basketball powerhouse school was like so invested in the water polo program. I knew that it would be a good program. And the other two schools, I mean, it was either for me at the end of the day, move to Laguna and go to Laguna Beach High School, or commute to Mater Dei. And I ended up choosing the latter because it wasn't really fair to my brother to get up our life and like move to Laguna so I could play sports for 4 years. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, we already sacrificed plenty with the countless family vacations and stuff that I have ruined over the years with like
Christmas.
Yeah,
the literal holiday, Christmas ruining that. Yeah. Okay, so you choose Mater Dei. Go Monarchs. Thank God you did. Or else like you wouldn't be here right here. It's crazy how that all works out. But tryouts, what were those like? I think just go into that.
So a year later, I'm at like the info session, and the coach, who's a very intense man. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am now without him, but man, like intense. Like,
yeah,
I learned a lot about myself. But so I'm like telling him my summer plans, and he was like, well, you know, if you're good enough, the only club camp that matters, like, is the Mater Dei Regency camp. And I was like, what about junior guards? And like, what about, I was going to be
we had to go to Greece.
No, I was like, I was going to be an assistant. I was going to go to USC camp.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, no, the only camp that matters is like this one. And this was like March. And so like my mom and I like leave this like info session, and like we both cry in the car. And so June rolls around, and I'm still playing for Laguna, which is like a Mater Dei, like, man, like we don't really like each other rivalry. Yeah. But I'm like learning to, you know, like summer practice wasn't as like brutal as one would expect. I mean, it was still like 3 hours every morning, but we had like Fridays off and like weekends off for the most part, like pretty humane. The tryouts was just like, there were 12 of us coming in, and one of the girls was already like star, like she's both on, two of them were both on like national teams already, and like they were gonna be on varsity, and one was playing still for Northwood, which is another club in Irvine, and one ended up actually switching to play for Mater Dei's club Regency. So I started like I remember getting like my first email to like be on like the red team, the varsity team, to like go to the practice and like go to the tournament. I was like so excited. And one of my first practices, I had like a 1-on-nobody counterattack, and I just like fumbled the ball, and I like missed. I like went to skip it, and it just sat there. And like keep in mind, like I'm like bleach blonde hair, braces, like skinny as a twig, like never lifted in my life. Like the summer was brutal, but I will say like the hardest part was continuing to prove myself, like getting invited to like the varsity night league. And I remember like the first couple of weeks of high school, I again crying in the car on the way home on my hour commute, because my mom, I didn't grow up in Newport, and I feel like I didn't know anybody. So like having that struggle combined with the fact that I was really like pushing my like 14-year-old body like in ways that I have never done. I think I gained like 20 pounds, and I remember freaking out about that, but it was just like muscle. And I remember gaining 20 pounds and like crying about it. Or there's a lot of crying that happened in these years.
A lot of tears.
A lot of tears, because it was just like such a big like a lot of transitions, like learning like to commute and like not feeling like I fit in, and like continuing to prove myself. Like it was just all very hard and like pretty mentally straining on like a 14-year-old kid. Yeah.
And then having to like join this team that is completely different, but also like filled with some of the best players.
Yeah. Like
in Orange County.
I remember finally making varsity, and it was like just there was 3, our team was so small. Like we had, our coach only took like 13 or 14 girls. And that, for anybody who doesn't know water polo, that's like 2 lines. That's like 2 lines of subbing.
Yeah.
And so like once you were a starter, you played the entire game. Yeah. Like we didn't really sub, which is also getting back.
That's like
that
is exhausting.
Yeah.
I don't think I could stand pool. and be. My mom always says, she goes, I think water polo is the hardest sport, because just she's like, I just like think about like sitting in the water and just treading water for an entire game. That sounds so miserable.
That's like rest.
It's like, oh, I can lay back now. That's so funny. But like, okay, so for tryouts, I mean, did you have any idea of how intense it would be? Like, was it worse than you thought, or kind of?
I think it was just like a shock. Like, but I was like I was super hungry. And like, I think part of the reason that's why our coach ended up I was nowhere near as talented as the other two freshmen, but I was really hungry, and I worked really hard, and I wasn't like a kiss ass in any sense. Like,
no,
he was not the kind of guy that would succumb to that.
Yeah.
But like I really, really, really wanted to make it, and like it was like, like how some people like I like read like Olympians like read like the Olympic year, like that's like a big extreme compared to this, but like that's what it felt. It was like I would like every single day. That's all I was thinking about. It was like, how am I gonna make varsity?
Yeah.
So I was really determined to do it, and I think I was kind of blinded by like how intense it was, and maybe that's why I think like in the beginning of my freshman year, it was a lot of stuff felt like it was like crashing and burning because I didn't feel like I fit in because I was focused so hard on this one goal.
Then so you make varsity. What was it like when you found, what was it, email, like you got the list of like the teams or?
No, it was just like once it felt pretty solidified when it was like.
Yeah, I guess you probably have
you have an idea, but I was still on the cusp. So like I got invited to like the varsity scrimmages, but so did this other girl, but then she ended up not making varsity, and then it was like finally like an email like literally a week before our season started.
Jeez.
So it felt like it's been like a 6-month tryout at this point, like crazy town.
So what was it like going on to varsity again, of like this incredible program, being 14?
Yeah, 14. I mean, I didn't play very much when I first came, so I really like. And I was okay with that. Like, I was a scrawny, like, I mean, our team was pretty good that year, but the next 2 years, like, we were phenomenal. Like, we were, I would argue, like, one of the top teams in the country.
Yeah.
And so I guess, like, that first year, just, like, dipping my toe in the water, but getting used to it. And then by the time, like, my sophomore and junior year rolled around, like, that's when it, like, I started to get more time. And I still struggle with this, and I didn't, there were certain aspects like where I would play a bunch and then I'd be benched for an entire game. And it was really hard on me mentally because I just didn't know what I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
And I just had to learn to like not take that personally when it's like, but I didn't understand that yet. So it was mentally exhausting, but I wasn't allowed to like show that side and like how anxious I was all the time of, okay, like if I mess up this one pass in this one game, I'm never going to play in the next game, and I'm just not going to, like, nobody trusts me. And like, it was just a lot of thoughts like that.
Yeah.
So I guess like being the 14-year-old was, that was difficult, but I think it was harder when I started to get older and like got that taste of like being a starter. And then a couple girls came back from after injuries, and I was back to square one, it felt like. So that was difficult. But I think it got harder as I got older. Yeah.
That's interesting when you were saying that. I was kind of thinking about it because, like, and it's, like, not related at all, but, like, thinking about, like losing my dad and, like, that going with that, like, one day at a time mentality. Like, it's so easy to get in your head, like, the things I would think about, like, oh, my God, who's going to walk me down the aisle? Oh, my God, like, how am I going to get through the next however many years without a dad? Like, but then thinking about you being like, I can't get into, like, I'm never going to play again. I suck. I'm never, like, going to be put in the pool again. For you, it's like, no, this game, like, is not my game. Or this practice, not my practice. Like, it's, I think in anything in life, it's beneficial to, like, okay, one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. Like, find your pace.
And there was a lot of that. And, like, I guess, like, and I'll talk about this later, too. I never really realized how anxious I was as a human being.
Yeah.
Because I don't really think I was allowed to be anxious.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't allowed to show that I was anxious because it would hurt my performance. And, like,
hold it in.
So it was just, like, a big ball of anxiety. And I think, I'll get into this when we talk more about, like, COVID. But, like, just kind of exploded once COVID hit.
Yeah.
So, and I look back and I, like, think of my anxious tendencies. And I'm like, this started a long time ago. This just isn't out of the blue.
14 years old seems about when this started.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely get into that. And I think like, well, it's just, I think anyone thinking about like their high school experience is like, how did I go from like 8 hours of school, sometimes having like for us, it was a first block, like starting at 7 a.m., then going to practice and then homework. It's just, it's an insane balance that like 14 through 18-year-olds have to manage.
Oh my gosh. And I definitely think all of this, like I hit like the apex when I was a junior. So this team was, we should have won CIF. I hate to be like one of those like high school glory days.
I remember that.
This team was like phenomenal. Like I still play with some of the girls on the team, and I play against a lot of them. So it's phenomenal team. It was our coach's last year. He was resigning to go, work like a real like corporate person job. So the boys had won CIF earlier that year. Like this was like our year to do it. We finally broke Laguna's winning streak, and that is like my hands down my favorite high school water polo memories. Breaking Laguna's, sorry Laguna, but breaking their like 51 game streak, and we had lost to them so many years, and like the practice that like led up to that game, I mean, just every single day, like that's all we thought about. And we joked because I play at Princeton. I have like plenty of my teammates are from Laguna, and since I played club there, I knew all the girls. But it's like that game like was a turning point for me, especially because I was just becoming a starter with the injuries that people had, and it was kind of like a chance for me to prove myself. And I finally got like that respect from both my coach and like it felt like my teammates as well, that like okay, like yeah, like so and so may not be in the pool for these games because their hand is broken, but like, you know what, like Maisie did a pretty damn good job. Like, and it was like this huge like sense of pride, like everything that I've been working for. But in this process, I'm going through the recruiting process at the same time, and like it's like dating. Like you're like trying to like see like play the game with all these coaches, and you just don't know like where it's gonna land. And each program only has 4 or 5 spots, so it's crazy. And luckily my recruiting class like was the year above was like so competitive. Like ours was still equally as competitive, but didn't seem as bad as the year above. And so that at the same time, I'm like taking the hardest AP classes of my life, like tutoring beyond galore to make my math ACT grade up. So like my schedule just was wake up, go to school all day, go to practice from like lift in the afternoon, either during school or like right after school. Practice from like 3:30 to 6:30. 4 to 6:30, depending on our coaches was starting at his new corporate job, so he was like trying to get over to come to practice. And then ACT tutoring every night at like 7:30. So I'd drive over to Whole Foods at Fashion Island, have dinner, try and do my other homework, go to ACT tutoring for an hour, drive home, do it again. And like that was just my schedule.
It was just life.
It was just life.
Yeah. And it's like you didn't even complain about it because it was just like it's what you had to do.
Yeah. Like I remember like telling my mom, I'm just like, oh, I'm so stressed, like I'm so tired, and like she's like, well, we're 3 years in.
It sucks. We're not done.
We're not transferring.
Yeah, you're literally at the peak of everything that you have to do. Exactly. Well, I definitely want to talk more about the recruiting process because I think that's just like such an insane process, and like seeing you go through it. But more talking about like going from being that freshman on varsity, and then getting up into like your junior and senior year, you're the older one on the team. You are the one to kind of like bring everyone under your wing. What was that transition like, and did you kind of like reflect and be like, okay, I've been there once?
More of my senior year, because my junior year I had amazing seniors, and it didn't, because they were there, it still felt like I was an underclassman because they had such a like overwhelmingly good presence of like how to be a leader personally. So like my senior year, it felt like like that meme of like the dog running around with like the office that's on fire. That's how my senior year felt, because our coach had left and we had like a new transition of leadership, and we had like 2 coaches in the span of like 6 months, and it was just like girls were transferring left and right, and like at the end of the day it was like me and one teammate just left, and we were like, oh my god, like it's us, and we're 2 of the only girls that have ever been on a varsity program. Like, it was insane by the time that everybody transferred and left. So, like, that is when I was kind of felt like I've been here before. And I still keep in touch with, like, the 2 girls that were freshmen when we were seniors. I texted them on their first opening day, and, like, they're going to go do amazing things. They're committed to USC and UCLA, and, like, one's, like, they're both playing with national teams. Like, they're way better than I ever was. Like, but it felt like we... Like, But I've been there, and, like, you kind of just, like, take everybody under your wing, especially like when you're from like South County and you're driving up, and like you drive the girls in between games to go get like food, and like that's kind of like how you foster that like senior leadership. And it definitely helped the fact that me and my co-captain were headed off to some pretty amazing places. So
definitely
it was really cool that we had that, but it was also like the 2 of us had huge mutual respect for each other and our differences, but also a lot of our similarities because we've been through the program. So we kind of wanted to make sure we fostered that environment for the next group of modern day water polo that came through.
Yeah, definitely. For when, like, and especially talking about junior year, like when things got tough, you ever felt like burning out? Like, was it more just like a head down, get through it type things? Or were there days where you were like, I don't know if I can keep doing this?
Combination.
Yeah.
Like, there were so many days, like, it was so, I think I've, like, blacked out, like, most of it. Like,
yeah.
I remember some practices and I remember some films because of, like, the things that were, like, said to me. I remember I've had, like, chairs thrown at me. I've had, like, water bottles left and right. Like, I mean, I remember, like, continually to think that I was, like, super fat when I look at pictures and I'm just, like, not, like a twig.
Like, that was, like, the best shape of my
life. Like, what? It was, but it was a lot of, get through it.
Yeah.
Like,
tough enough.
And then remember how I told you, like, my goal of, like, making varsity, that was, like, all
Yeah.
I thought about? Like, as soon as I had Princeton in mind, like, that is all that I thought about. Like, it was just, like, get through this practice, email the coach, hopefully I get recruited. Like, it was all for Princeton, which, like, is pretty awesome that it worked out the way that I wanted it to. But it was,
God.
like, all I thought about was, like, how am I going to get here?
Yeah. Which I think is a good segue into the recruiting process, becoming a prince, going from a monarch to a tiger. But before you got to do that, you had to go through a pretty brutal process of getting there. Like you said, like dating, which is the most brutal process of them all.
I'm like, I've had more relationship advice with all these coaches. Like, not even real dating experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like, September 1st, it's junior year. Like,
Yeah.
it's the day that the recruiting portal opens. Like, I remember, like, filling out the questionnaires, and I got a text from the coach, Louie, at the time, who now coaches at Navy, but he texted me on the first day, and I was so excited because a couple of my friends who were just committed were like, oh my gosh, I got a text on the first day, and, like, I'm committed.
Yeah.
And it was so exciting. So I was talking to I emailed every coach in the country except for UCLA and Stanford.
Maisie, I'm gonna get some dislikes on this video.
I just, like, I wasn't good enough. And I knew I was never going to Stanford.
Yeah.
I wasn't good enough, and I just never vibed with UCLA. I'm a Trojan family.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I emailed all the coaches, like, every D1 program. And so my junior year was filled, on top of this ACT being in season hell, it was filled with, how do I cram in a visit and not miss practice? And even though it's, for my future, I can't miss practice. So finally, I think it's like March, like things start like really getting serious. You're like emailing coaches like I emailed like every like couple of weeks with like updates of like how, like what tournaments I'm going to, like where you should watch me. Like I wasn't really like a stats kind of girl because I just never liked to email that. Like I'd be like, oh, I'm playing in this, and like you just kind of knew like if you played for Modern Day, like you were legit, so you came and watched anyway. So I remember like this Laguna game, like there were a bunch of coaches that were out here for like the trips that I've been on now is at Princeton, which is really funny, like over the January trip, which was really exciting. And like all these coaches are coming up to me at like you actually, no, they're not coming up to me. You have to go up to them and like say hello. And there were 3 of us going through this process at the same time, but it was never like a competitive thing because we all knew that we were going to different paths. And like, I kind of knew that I wanted to go to the East Coast at this point. So I was really like pushing hard for Princeton and Brown and Harvard. But also I really liked Indiana and a couple of other California schools. I was really interested in Santa Barbara and San Diego and USC. So like I was all over the place with like what I wanted to do. But I think towards like the end of like spring, I was like going on these visits, and I remember just visiting Princeton for the first time and being like, wow, like this is it. This is it. And I like my family did like a road trip up and down the East Coast, which is really, really, really cool. And got to like experience all of it, but like Princeton came out like as number one. And it kind of was like the first like that trip was like the first realization of like, okay, I could see myself moving to the East Coast and I'm going to be happy with it. But I also like went on some amazing other trips and really loved Indiana. Like, and they were all different. That's what was also really cool. And, but it also scary that like a 16-year-old, 17-year-old's like making a decision, like their junior year of high school, like the most stressful year. Like, where am I going to go to college? And like, I know like my brother's going through that other process now, and I've seen you go through it, that it's a very, very different kind of stress, but it's when you're a junior, like most juniors, like, yeah, they're thinking about college, but they're not like.
But not, yeah. I mean, we don't even know what is like in our wheelhouse yet.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a little bit based on grades, but we haven't applied. We don't know where we've been accepted. It's
Yeah,
such, like,
so it's so weird.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I didn't even think about, like, you were your junior, like, 16, 17, and at least for, like, a year later is a big difference. Like, when you're gonna be done with high school,
Right.
you have to make that decision. And you're also more making, like, you're making it for, like, a lot of reasons of, like, the program you're gonna be a part of, the coach, the team, but then also you have to think about, like, the experience, actually living there.
Yeah.
Like, all of that. For us, it's more just, like, of course, like, the experience, you're living there, the social scene that you want, but yeah, then having that on top of that.
Well, and I will say the best advice that I got from my dad during this process was imagine yourself at a school and you have to be medically retired. Like, are you going to be happy at a school if you are medically retired? Mm-hmm. And that really helped me with the whole process, because there were some schools that I was like, maybe not. Like, this isn't my fit without water polo. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's becoming medically retired could happen like that. Like, it's, you never know. And a coach could quit. A program, like, players could transfer. It's less common in college, but like,
possible.
Like, after experiencing all, like, those changes, structural changes, especially like my junior, senior year, I kind of got that and wanted to be at a place that was very stable, which kind of led me more to Princeton, even though they had a lot of coaching changes when I was going through the recruiting process, which was a whole other kind of stress.
Yeah,
like,
Jesus.
It was really stressful. I didn't think I was going to end up going there, and I was thinking about going to USC and, like, I wasn't going to play very much, but, you know, being at a program that was storied, and I loved the school itself, and that was part of my advice. And I ended up having a meeting with the coach. Didn't really go that well.
Nice.
Yeah. And I, like, left this meeting with my dad, and we were both like, that felt kind of shady. Like, what is going on?
This was the SC coach,
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah. And we're on a trip. We're, like, about to go to LAX to go on a trip together, and I'm like, Dad, I don't want to go there. He's like, I don't want you to go there.
That's a former Trojan saying that too. That's big.
And so I land in wherever we're going, and I, like, immediately text my coach now, Derek, and, like, let's set up a call.
Nice.
Immediately. And Cece Stewart, shout out,
Cece. My number one fan, literally, so she deserves a shout out.
Cece texts me, and she's saying, you know, I just committed, like, there are 2 spots left, like, get your shit together, essentially. Mm-hmm. And for the next, like, 3 weeks, I'm like, this kind of ruined my, like, vacation with my dad in France, but
but, you know,
but it was important.
Gotta think about your future.
Gotta think about my future. That's the other thing about all of this process, like, in water polo. It was all consuming, and it is all that I thought about for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So
does it ever, like, not haunt you, but are you sometimes like, I can't believe that was, I was so consumed by it.
Yeah. It's absolutely haunting. Like, it's, you ask anybody who's been through this process, and especially at, like, a program like Mater Dei or our rivals, like, it's scary how much we put ourselves through at such a young age. And I didn't realize the effects until, I think, you know, water polo taking a little bit of a sideline in my life at Princeton, because not between COVID and the fact that I chose a school that I wanted to have that balance. And that eventually is why I ended up choosing Princeton.
Yeah, which I think was a great decision.
It's a great decision.
If I might say so myself, I think it was a great decision for you. We really quick, I just want to ask, then go forward.
Yeah.
So the portal opens, like, what, first day junior year or whatever?
Yeah.
But at what point were you like, I know I want to play in college, and also I have the potential to be a college water polo athlete?
My freshman year.
Because
it was just, like, the norm. Like, all the seniors were going to go play college. It was like, wow, this feels like this is real.
Yeah, well, going to, like, Mater Dei, we had friends committed by sophomore year.
Yeah.
And it was just, like, every time I tell someone I go there, it's like, what sport did you play? I'm like, oh, like, I was on the school newspaper. I played up until, like, sophomore year, but
that's
not
like
the route.
That's when you just, like, knew, like I knew by my, like, at the end of my freshman season, like, wow, like, this dream could become a reality. Like, this is why I commute every day. Like, this is why I do this, because you look at the seniors going off to, like, they were going to Stanford and Michigan that year, and it was just like, wow, like, these are great schools.
Yeah.
Like that's what this water polo can open these doors for me. And that's kind of why, you kind of, when the bad days were really bad, you just like kind of like put the blinders down, like, where am I going? Like, I have nothing without water polo right now. Like, this opens doors.
Exactly. Yeah, I just got to think about like what this could lead to. Absolutely. Okay, so recruiting process, you've gotten through it. Wait, you also did camps though at Princeton when you were younger, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of, do you think that helped get your foot in the door a little bit, or just like
a little bit? It definitely like exposed me to like living on the East Coast, and it's really funny because I remember staying in the dorm that was like really close to like where I lived on my freshman year, and it kind of it made me realize like, oh, like playing it was the first time I've ever played in an indoor pool. Like it was crazy.
Yeah.
I flew out straight from JO's, which is Junior Olympics, 4 days of just straight water polo, just beat, and flew out straight on a red eye to Princeton, or stayed like right by Newark Airport. And like at Princeton, we have like this train called we take the New Jersey Transit, but we have the Dinky, which is claim to fame the shortest rail train like destination in the entire country, because it goes from Princeton Junction right to campus, and it's like so rickety and like it's like you'll see.
Oh god, yeah. I'm
it's
supposed
just
to
like,
take that train in like 2 weeks.
It's just like
Let's hope I make it.
It's just the Danky. Like it's and you like I like walked off and like walked up to my dorm, like checked in. Like the campus is like kind of daunting at first because you have like the Gothic architecture at the top, and it slowly becomes uglier as you go down campus. So I remember being down campus and being like, ew. Yeah. But I did, like, that definitely put my foot in the door and like made me realize like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah. There's a potential that future Maisie will be here.
Yeah.
So then you get the offer. What was that like?
Unbelievable.
It was stressful for a while. Like, couldn't you not talk about it?
I couldn't talk about it. So I committed like 1 week into my senior year. Okay. It was just awesome. My coach asked me if my favorite holiday was Halloween, like making a joke with orange and black. And I was like, no, it's the 4th of July. Idiot.
Nice.
Yeah, so I committed first week of my senior year. And I wasn't, because you say that you're committed to the application process because there's a chance that you may not get into school, which is sketchy. But basically it's like, don't get arrested and don't get a seat and you'll get in.
Yeah.
Then I get a thing called a likely letter, which is I was driving home from a Monday night scrimmage and I got a call from a 609 area code, which is Princeton's area code. And it was the dean of admissions, who was the acting dean of admissions at the time. It was like, we'd like to formally extend your likely letter, which is basically, you're likely to get into Princeton. You're most likely. Not guaranteed. And then I was able to announce it when the regular admitted students, everybody was able to get in on like December 12th, 13th, somewhere in that time. And I was like officially in. And I got out of practice to check, and my coach was like, this doesn't matter. And I was like,
you're like, this is the next 4 years of my life.
So I like got out of a swim set, like checked the portal and was like, woo, and then had to like jump back in.
Like do a little fun jump and then try and get back in the pool, grab a ball.
Literally.
Run swim laps.
Yeah, so that was the whole thing was I didn't feel like secure until really October when I got my likely letter, because I was not allowed to talk about it. But then I like got in and it just like,
you breathe. Like after like 6 years, you can breathe.
I was like, I think I actually like was like calm, which, as you know me, I'm not
common. Not a common theme with Maisie McPherson.
I'm not Zen.
No, not a Zen person.
But then I was. That night I was.
Yeah. It's funny because for like the first 3 years of high school, you were not someone I ever wanted to be. Like just your life. Like I was like, I'm not going to practice at 6 a.m. Like I'm not going to live this hell. But then you were in Princeton, and we all started like the application process and like the SATs and doing everything. And I was like, screw you. Like I'm so jealous of your life. I wish I just knew where I was going.
Yeah, no, that's what I remember, like the trade-off being of like, oh, like the NARPs, sorry, non-athletic regular people, they don't have to do like all these like horrible practices.
Yeah.
And then I like seeing you and my brother go through this college application process, probably wouldn't trade it.
No, like the amount of times we'd sit in the car and be like, okay, I could go here, pros, cons, pros, cons.
We had like
pros,
such
cons.
like so many yellow legal pad conversations.
So many yellow, just like crying. I had like this whiteboard in my room. I'm like, pros, cons, pros, cons, pros, cons.
UW,
yeah,
UT.
I'm like, where are we?
And then you just like threw in TCU like the last week, and I was like, where is this coming from?
You know what I was coming from was I kept getting sponsored ads on my Instagram from TCU. I was like, the universe is trying to tell me something.
And I
that
just remember being like,
no, just like stop adding options in.
You're making your life worse.
It's making life so hard. I made my life hell.
Yeah.
My mom was never mind. I'm not gonna. She was very good to me during those times. Couple fights, a couple yelling matches in the middle of a restaurant, but besides that, we were great. It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least we didn't have those, like 4 years of crying leading up to going to practice.
Yeah, there was a lot of
little crying.
There were
in
a lot of
between.
tears.
A lot of tears. But you got to Princeton, one of the best universities in the entire country, world, whatever. But yeah, let's talk about Princeton. Let's talk about the Tigers, your experience there. But first, that transition. What was that like going from, I think now it's important to talk about also school because like you said, the program, it's intense, but it's not like if you went to USC.
Yeah.
And so school, and from what you've told me, it seems to be a lot more prioritized.
Yes.
Than athletics.
Which is
It's
really
kind of
funny. Is really funny because I always like was like academic, but like now I'm like I feel like I'm a hardo a bit.
These are like the valedictorians of the world.
Yeah,
like you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah, so I came in like taking basic classes. I honestly like there's one every semester I pretty much love all my courses except for my first semester of my first year. Like I just like really boofed it. Like but you just kind of have to go through like the bad math class and like
exactly.
like you just kind of have to do it.
Yeah.
The transition like socially amazing. Water polo wise loved the team. School was my hardest transition because I was used to being like smart but like for the first time in my life, I was like, I am out of place. Like, I am in over my feet. Like, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, I hate this. I took the most basic math class, Math 100, which is essentially like foundations of calculus.
Which is not easy.
But like Princeton math, like
Princeton,
teaches it differently. But since I was in like Math 100, they don't even offer tutors in like the McGraw Center for like Math 100 because you're just expected to know it. And like I didn't even take calculus in high school. Yeah. Like I took pre-calc and they're like, well, you're taking pre-calc again. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like this is not pre-calc. I took pre-calc. And I failed so many tests. Like every quiz. I was in office hours. Like this professor made it so hard. And I remember like walking back like after office hours, like broad daylight on a Friday, just like sobbing, just like audibly sobbing. And I think that was like the time like when I really felt like an imposter. Like I do not belong here. I can't even pass like the easiest math class at Princeton. Like why am I even here? Like why would my coach like try and squeeze me through admissions? Like we already know that like I was the GPA bringer downer. Like why am I here? Like clearly like I wasn't cut out for this. And I think as time has gone on, I've definitely like gotten my groove. Like I didn't luckily my parents are so supportive like anything that I want to study. So like I didn't have that extra pressure, which is great because at a liberal arts school you want to study what you want to study. You want to study what you want to write research papers about that are going to be consuming an entire semester and up to a year of it. So you want to be interested in it. But I hadn't found my groove yet, and writing sim was like learning how to write in the Princeton fashion, and just I remember putting so much time into this paper, and I got my first C on a paper at a pregame. And so naturally like it just put a damper on
the night.
And I was just like I like worked so hard on this paper. I like went to office hours and with this professor, and he was like, yeah, your thesis is good, your thesis is great, like do this. And then C plus.
Yeah.
And though that was like the hardest time of like I don't belong here. And that really like learning how to study and like learning, it was just brutal. And I just didn't know what I was good at yet. And I had to find like the niche thing that I was like, okay, this is my jam.
Yeah. You just had to find your place
Yeah.
amongst these kids who are just
Super geniuses.
super geniuses. I can't even imagine. Like, I genuinely cannot imagine.
Some of the people I
Being in
know,
that
I'm like,
position.
how, like,
Yeah.
one of my friends finished, like, he didn't have to take, like, a language. Everybody's required to take language. He's like, yeah, I just, like, passed, like, my, like, ancient Greek exam, like, before, like, high school. Like, I'm fluent in it. I'm like, what?
Does anyone even speak that anymore?
I have no idea.
That's insane.
But, like, I took a, like, intro to Italian, and I, like, met a lot of friends.
There you go. Exactly.
I
It's all
was
about the social
also
scene.
bad about it. I was so bad at Italian. Oh, God. But, you know, my professors, like, liked how much I tried.
Exactly. See,
I tried really
it's all
hard.
about the character and the work ethic.
Yes.
They'll take you far. He's like coming off me. I'm sorry. I keep messing with them. Okay. Keep talking about Italian.
I don't think you want to hear
No,
that.
I don't want to. I heard a lot about it. I remember one time you texted me, you're like, I wrote a story about you for Italian. I was like, thank you. The professors are so interested in me. They're like, who's this girl, Alex? We want her here at Princeton.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That was a time. But then so I finished my freshman semester, and I don't like people like talk about grades, but not really. But I'm just gonna talk openly with grades. So I got like straight.
At Princeton, they don't really talk about grades.
People are like weirdly like not like gatekeepy, but they don't
Yeah.
want to be like a competitive thing. And like people like my team especially is very academic, which is kind of shocking for a team. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna ask if if it was helpful to have other people that were a team, but they were also just very academic.
no, we're super academic, but
Yeah.
like in a way that it's like helpful.
Yeah.
Like people like want to see us succeed. Like we want to like we've had like I think our average GPA last year was like 3.4, like 3.5,
Yeah.
maybe 3.6. It was like pretty high like for
Yeah.
like a
that's-
team.
Yeah.
And there is a stigma that like athletes like aren't as smart because they like we do get like pushed a little bit through admissions, which
The
is
likely letter.
the likely letter. But it's really cool being on a team that like values how like being good at whatever major we want to do, and that's why we have such a diverse group of women. But I'm getting into my groove, second semester, freshman year, like right before COVID hits, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna decide between psych and history.
Yeah.
Like psych is more applicable, but I love history, and so I took these social psychology and revolutionary America, and ended up falling in love with the history class, and was like, Dad, like you need to like understand like why I want to be a history major. He's like, well, do you want to be a teacher or a lawyer? I'm like, no. He's like, why are you doing it? So then kind of getting sent home for COVID in this sense was a blessing because he like audited my class with me and realized like this is legit. You're learning from like the best historians in the country. Like,
Yeah.
why aren't you going to be a history major? So then
He's like, Maisie, why haven't you thought of this earlier?
come on. But it was phenomenal to have that like extra support because my parents, I'm lucky enough that they support in anything
Yeah.
that I want to study. But and that because I know people that their parents don't, which is
Yeah.
sad because you go to a liberal arts school, you should be able to take like whatever weird class that you want. Like
Yeah.
I've taken some like you know like the memes about liberal arts schools that are like ridiculous titles. Like I have classes like that. but
Yeah.
it's special, but
That's
yeah.
pretty insane. For since like obviously it is such an academic school, what did water polo look like around that? Because like modern day it didn't matter. Like you would practice no matter what, whenever you could get it in.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible that I got to get out of practice early to go take a math final.
Nice.
And I was like,
Oh wait, for modern day.
no, I didn't have that at modern day. It was like, you finished your finals and you got
yeah.
straight in the pool because it was
Yeah.
hell month. Like,
Yeah.
like we had a preseason, we had finals after Christmas break before with the old schedule, which was stupid. But I was able, our coach was like, if you have a final on this day, let me know. Like, if you need to study, let me know. So academics is definitely prioritized, which was like a weird adjustment as well for me, especially because at modern day it was like,
No, because like you would get out of class early for like a game at modern
Yeah.
day, but you would not get out of practice for a math test. Like, it made sense.
Yeah.
Like made a lot of sense. Love modern day.
yeah,
No, I do.
yeah.
I'm not talking shit. I'm just saying that was the culture.
Yeah, it
of
was.
But yeah, it was completely different at Princeton. And your guys' practice, like in off season.
We only have 12 practice over
Yeah.
12 weeks with the coach. Like we have swims that we have to complete and lifts
Yeah.
that we complete, but it's
Same
like
shape and stuff.
it's pretty incredible that we actually get to like experience life as like a student without the athlete part. And then
Yeah.
in season it's like our schedule is tough. Like I'm down at the pool early every single morning, and we sometimes have triple days, and so like that's been hard to balance. But especially again, back to junior year, you know, the slump. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
But it's, I got used to it. And you just kind of get used to, like, putting your harder classes in the fall and then trying to take a lighter load in the spring.
Yeah. So now I think, you know, because COVID hit, like, March our freshman year. So obviously, like, everyone was affected by COVID, like, in one way or another, but especially college students, like, it took away a big part of our college experience. And sometimes, like, I used to think we were lucky because it's like, okay, we got, like, that normalcy for a little bit, and we had that, like, foundation. I would say that if it were like 2 weeks, but like now being in like 2 years and thinking like, no, I honestly wish that I had no idea what that normalcy of college was like.
Because the freshmen are so like, now the people, they're just like, they're so naive and they like love like anything that they can.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like happy to have like any sort of social scene or like with sports, like practice or something. We're like, no, you have no idea what this can be. Like it's so much better. But I mean, for you as an athlete, that completely. It kind of completely took away everything you've worked for the past like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it honestly like getting the like it was I'll never forget like the whole week. I'll never forget. It was like the weather was like sunny and like 65 in March in New Jersey, which is just first of all spooky.
Yeah.
And they accidentally leaked an email basically saying that we would go online for 2 weeks, like the night before. They were supposed to be emailed out on Monday. And so everybody's freaking out, like, it's midterms, and, you know, at an academic institution, like, midterms, like, you don't really leave the library, like, people are not caring. So I go to practice, and coach is like, okay, well, you know, we don't know what's going to happen, like, we're probably not going to be able to go to California, but we'll be back in 2 weeks for Harvard.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. But I'm in denial at this point. Like,
yeah,
I am like, I don't want to go home. Like, this has been, like, the best thing, like, the best experience. Like, don't take this away from me. And then I go and take 2 midterms, and I go take a nap, and I wake up to CC. Like, my door was taped. She's, like, in my room, and she woke me up. She's like, season's been canceled. Like, get up. And I'm like, you're lying. And she's like, no, I'm not. Like, and we were the first to cancel season. So all my friends at, like, Pac-12 schools are like, there's no way we're going to cancel because the Ivy League has to be, like, so... like, they just have to take, like, so many different precautions because, like, they are, like, a leading research institution. So, like, they have to be, like, ahead of the curve on this kind of stuff. I hate even saying ahead of the curve, but, like, it's such a COVID lingo. But it was just mayhem, like, during campus those two days that we left. Like, I remember emailing my professors, can I take this exam when I get home? My coach told me to pack up my dorm. They're like, no, because, like, at this point the university still hasn't even announced that we're going home for, like, the semester. So between Wednesday night, we kind of knew we were getting sent home. Thursday, we find out everybody has to be moved out by Saturday. Hectic. I like threw all of my stuff just into all these suitcases. Like, I don't even know, like, when I went back to my storage unit for the first time in 6 months, I was like, I don't even know what's in here. I literally don't know. And it was, like, so scary doing this all without my parents for the first time. I just turned 19, so, like, it was, like, so scary. And I was coming home, my dog had just died. Like, I was, like, just down bad. And it was tough. I had one horrific mental breakdown in the laundry room because I was trying to pack up all my stuff on the night before I'm supposed to leave, and I thought somebody took out half of my clothes and put it on top of the washer and the other half into a dryer, so I thought somebody stole half of my clothes. So I immediately call my mom. I'm, like, screaming, crying, and it's just it's like the worst. Sorry, she's walking in. It's like the worst story ever, and she's like, so did you find your clothes? And I was like, yeah, they're in the dryer next door.
So it was super courteous and, like, got them in the jar.
Yeah, but just only put half of it.
Why did they do half?
I don't know. It was stupid. I was so mad.
Wait, so when you came, so they canceled season before school even said fully we're going online.
Yeah, the Ivy League canceled season, and then the next day the university was like, we're going online. It was early in the day the Ivy League canceled all sports, all championship sports. No, anything but, like, besides championship season. The next day was, like, championship season, and then the school was like, we're going online for the rest of the semester. Whirlwind. It was a whirlwind of 24 hours.
Whirlwind. I mean, for like, everyone. I remember waking up because I lived in the sorority house, and, like, people were packing up. And, like, we usually, between quarters, we have to, like, put all our stuff on our beds. Like, nothing would be on the floor. And people were like, I'm going home. And I'm like, I gotta book a flight. Like, I can't, like, just go down the street and go home. It was so hectic. But, I can't imagine, like, for you, it was like season being canceled. And by the time I went home, it hadn't been announced yet that everything would be online for Foley in spring. Yeah. But then that's just so insane. That was such a hectic time. But then I can't imagine like being an athlete. Like you had these plans like come to California, these tournaments. I remember you were like, yeah, I'm going to be home spring break.
That's like right now.
Yeah, exactly. Where I was going to be. And then you were like, yeah, I'm home the rest of the semester.
It was devastating. Like I was broken. Like it felt like everything I had ever worked for was taken away. Yeah. And it was just awful. I lost my love for sport again, which was really hard after it's been like my life for however many years. Yeah. I like couldn't get out of bed days at a time. I didn't even want to like exercise because I was like, I have nothing to exercise for.
What's the point?
What am I doing this for? And it was really, really, really difficult those first 3 months at home.
Yeah. I wanted to ask like how, because not only do you have to like focus on staying in shape and stuff for that, but also your team. Like that's so important. Like the bonding with the team, and you guys were just starting to get into season, and also for you as a freshman just starting to get to know a lot of these girls. How did you guys manage that? Like one, how did you manage like finally getting that love back and like staying in shape, but also the managing that bond with your teammates?
Yeah, so I didn't really honestly get my love back until this year, because the Ivy League canceled everything again last year, so it was really frustrating while all these other teams got to compete. Like we were still like we were completely online for like 3 semesters, which is crazy. The bonding, we did a lot of team Zooms that were happy hours.
Nice. Like
literally once a week. Luckily, a lot of us lived in Southern California, so when it felt like safe and like, I remember the first like 2 months, it was like, oh, things are opening back up again after a complete lockdown. A lot like I had like my team come over and we had like a darty and just hung out and went to the beach, and so we still were able to keep in touch quite a bit because we all live in the same vicinity. Yeah, it just wasn't the same. Like it was just like everybody was just heartbroken, especially like our seniors. We had one senior. Yeah, she was heartbroken, and like our juniors. I honestly think our juniors got like a really short end of the stick because it was like. It felt like their senior year was gonna be good, and then it just wasn't. It just wasn't. Yeah. So
I know that was so hard about like, for us. I was like, oh, like going back sophomore year, I was like, okay, it's not bad. We're in this in between of like, we're not going abroad or anything until junior year, but also like we have each other through freshman year, like, and we're not just starting out college in this super weird limbo, like everything's restrictive. Yeah. And then it was like, no, it just continually got worse. Honestly, when we like all felt bad for the seniors, like. I mean, especially like in sports, I can't imagine like that's your last season. I was like, I would kill to have been a senior that year. They just like all lived in a house together. They were hanging out. They still got like all of that first semester or quarter or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it was a struggle for everybody.
But it was very much like jockeying for who had it the least bad.
Yeah, who had it the least bad. And then things just continually got
terrible.
Got terrible. But now you get to play your first season in your junior year of college.
Well, I had 11 games. I had 11 games before
your freshman year or sophomore?
11 games my freshman year. Oh. But like this is like my real like
first
real
season.
Like real season. So like, I mean, I've been out this month. Yeah. I've actually just kind of been through the ringer. I'm just getting off of a concussion and got my entire team had COVID, so all but 4.
Just downhill.
It was just bad. So I'm not playing a bunch this week, unfortunately, because I, failed 3 concussion tests.
Whatever,
it's fine.
We come back.
But it's been really good. Like our team is really deep and it's really awesome. And after like those 2 years, like our freshmen and sophomores have never played water polo collegiate. So there are only 4 girls on our team that like have played a full collegiate season, and like another 3 who have like played like half of one, a third of one. So it's like this really like there's a lot of excitement around like us being traveling and being out here for our spring break trip. And after this week we have like a couple weeks off, and then it's Harvard and Michigan. Those are our rivals, and it's gonna be great. So we're finally getting into league play, and but I think it's really weird that like my junior spring is just like fleeting.
Yeah. What was it like coming back, like seasons on, kind of getting back into the groove of it?
I was so anxious about it. Like I in my time off, I had like written for the newspaper. I'd gotten like into like a lot of stuff. I lived in Philadelphia. There were no pools. So I took up running. And then I lived in a house in Princeton with some water polo teammates, which was hilarious. But we all drove to practice, and it was like an hour practice every day, like in pods.
Yeah.
We like weren't allowed to like, we weren't allowed to have a full practice together until the end of April.
Jeez.
Like crazy town.
Yeah.
Then this summer I lived in London, and it just obviously like water polo was like at the back of my mind. So this fall I was really struggling to be a student athlete again and not just a student. And then once we hit this season of, all right, we're coming back for training like January 7th, like it's go time. Yeah. And it felt like it was scary. It was definitely scary. But then our first tournament at Santa Barbara, I was like playing well, and it just felt like, it felt so good to be back.
Yeah, just like you got right back in, and it just fit.
It fit.
Yeah, fit like glove. Jeez, I can't I don't know. Even I remember I was anxious about going back to school, and that was it. And for you, it was like having to get back into this groove of being an athlete again, and that intense schedule. I can't imagine. Was there? I mean, I'm sure there was. Did you ever think about
quitting?
Quitting, yeah.
Yeah, this year especially. Yeah. Absolutely. I was like, I'm so done. I was in New York with my mom, and I was like, I don't even think I can do it anymore. Like my body feels like it's deteriorating. Like she was like, just push through. Think about it. And a lot of, for me, I do everything for myself, but a lot of it for me was I'm not going to quit because my dad would be devastated. And I'm not playing just for that. Now I'm back into it, but it was just, that was a huge factor, that, and I have this team that
everyone's been through it.
Everyone's been through it, and we all lean on each other, and I was like, I can't leave the team.
Yeah.
And then once I got back into it, I was like, why would I ever? I have two. And the other part with me was I have 2 seasons left of my entire life.
Yeah.
And everything I've ever worked for, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Hanging up the cap.
Yeah.
So it's push through. Yeah. And I thank God I did, but it was a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little rough there, but that is just needing to be put back in that position, and the reminder of why you love it. And
I had a lot of therapy sessions about getting back into sports. It was
so that's what I wanted to go into is, so now I think especially going just in general before COVID, going modern day to Princeton, that was already a slowdown a little bit. I mean, speed up of academics and things, but a slowdown of what water polo has been in the past. And then COVID, it was everything was kind of put at a standstill, and you really had time to think about your past high school experience with what water polo has been. And then you said get into being anxious and stuff. Was that once things started to slow down, is that when you actually started to feel oh shit?
That's when I was wow, maybe I do have anxiety. When they had the announcement, I really didn't do well with canceled plans. That was the first major trigger for me. And it goes online that in July we announced that we're gonna be it was freshmen and juniors invited back one semesters, and sophomores and seniors invited back spring semester, and I was freaking out and in that moment I was I should start seeing a therapist to handle that, because I was having these horrible panic attacks about, oh my gosh, my future, spiraling anxious thoughts. And I really think the time at home, and I honestly think that's why I associated being home as bad for honestly until this past couple times, this past year being home. Because I was just used to just having these anxious spiraling thoughts in my bed, in my childhood bedroom. It just felt wow, this was a fever dream. I loved my college experience, and we had friends that didn't, which was difficult and in a different way, but I thought that wow, I felt like I was really hitting my groove, and this is taken away from me, and some people are happy about being home, but I hate it here. That's how it felt.
Yeah, well, it's hard, coming home, but also, it wasn't the normal coming home of, a month at Christmas, a week or whatever at Thanksgiving. It was 6 months of being home.
Oh, yeah.
For us, and then just, and for us being freshmen, it was so, because we had to get used to, that leaving home and adjusting to a completely new environment, both of us out of state, that, it's a plane flight home.
Yeah.
And then being home for 6 months, getting that comfort again of, parents and family and your childhood bedroom.
Yeah.
And then being all right, But, like, not only is it time to go back to school, it's time to go back and it's going to be completely unfamiliar from what you knew before. It's like starting in a completely new experience is what it felt like.
Yeah, it was.
And it was terrifying. Like, so much anxiety came
like,
with that.
So, and for me, it was, like, all about the unknown. And, like, I just... Like, I just needed something stable again in my life, and for the first time, I didn't have any of that. I didn't have my sport. I didn't even have, like, school to feel stabilized by, because I still felt like an imposter at Princeton. So it was just like, well, shit. Like, like, here I am, just sitting with my thoughts.
So then...
What do I do?
What do I do exactly? Therapy. So what was, like... Was it just, like, the severe anxiety attacks that you were just like,
maybe we should go talk to someone.
Let's go talk to someone about it.
Let's go talk to somebody about it. My parents were like, we can't do that for you. So it was kind of like an intervention. It was like, you need some professional help. And I was like, all right,
we can't help you.
That
works. I'll go figure that out.
So I started seeing somebody, like, through our school, and it was, like, honestly great, because she was like, okay, and I learned how to, like, do, like, mental health tactics, and, like, there are some other things that, like, I also realized that were other triggers besides COVID about like not being able to control situations that I've been through, and I wasn't ready to, like, unpack that yet, and still having a hard time with that. So it's hard. Like it's just hard to, like, even, like, get through that. And and then when I moved to Philly, I lived in Philly my sophomore fall. I was, like, really, like, that was, like, a huge test of, okay, are you comfortable in like a very unfamiliar environment? Like, stuff is up in the air all the time. And honestly, for the most part, it was. And, but I will say, like, the thing that I really needed to lean on for therapy was when I lived in Princeton my sophomore spring. My house was just going through it. Like, everybody was just down horrendous.
Everyone was on water polo, right?
Yeah, everyone was on water polo. It's like, we're all struggling. Like, we had 3 juniors, 2 sophomores. One of us ended up taking a gap year. Like, it was just bad. Like, it wasn't like Princeton was just not the place that we wanted it to be. Like, people were ratting on each other left and right for, like, having social gatherings of more than 5 people. Like, it was awful. And that was the time that I was like, wow. Like, leaving that, I realized, like, how dark we were all, like, in just such a dark place.
Yeah, that time was especially. And you guys, like, couldn't leave the county.
We couldn't leave. We couldn't leave our county.
Jesus, it's not like there's too much in that county.
There's nothing there. There's, like, the university, and then there's, like, counties. Oh my. And we, like, lived in, like, this, like, neighborhood, like a family neighbor. Like, it wasn't like, we don't have, like, off-campus student housing because we all live in dorms. But it was objectively a little bit better than living in the dorm because the dining hall food was just garbage. So it was just, like,
you kind of had your own pace a little bit.
A little bit, like, we could, like, cook, but it was just still, like, living in suburban New Jersey.
Princeton, New Jersey.
Like, I don't even know what we did.
20 years old.
It was just, like, horrific. And I think that, like, those, like, 4 months was, like, I needed something, like, a light at the end of the tunnel.
But there was nothing really
there was nothing.
Because everything was so, like, oh, it's good, it's bad, it's changing, season's on, season's off. Like,
it was just, like, they canceled sports again.
Oh,
like, you guys are all invited back, but nothing's in person, but you can't really have any gatherings, but, like, you can see 5 people, but, like, it was just, like, people were ratting on each other for, like, hanging out in a dorm without a mask on. Like, it was just scary. And, like, we had fun, like, illegally. Like, it was, like, are we gonna get, like, honor coded for, you know, going to, like, a dinner party with 12 people? Like, it was just a different place. And I look back at, like, Princeton now as, like, pretty much the same as it was my freshman year. There's still, like, you know, we've had a couple of COVID outbreaks and we've had to shut down, but that's life, I guess,
that's
as we know it now. But it was, like, looking back at that, it was just, like
rough times. Especially looking back, and, like, not only looking back on that for you, but looking back on what your high school experience was like and everything that came with that. A lot of trauma. A lot of shit.
A lot of shit.
Brought about a lot of shit.
Yeah.
But now you guys are more,
it's very open.
Very normal.
And I think it really opened up a conversation with, like, student athletes, mental health, and I think, like, the recent passing of that Stanford soccer player, which is just horrific. And I saw, like, there's just not enough conversation about athletes' mental health, and, you know, part of me, like, I joke about it, but, like, like, I'm on medication. I'm not afraid to say that. Like, I'm not afraid to say that I'm in therapy, and I'm not afraid to, like, want to help other people go through it. Like,
exactly.
Like, college is difficult for a variety of things, and finally realizing that, like, okay, like, you know, this is not just like a phase. Like, I was like diagnosed with, you know, it's GAD, but like it's just anxiety, and like that's fine. But like I didn't really ever have this conversation around mental health because everything else was like focused on what if I'm not desired? What if I'm, you know, damaged? Like, it's like
baggage.
Yeah, like what if I'm not desired as a player? What if I, you know, I can't let this like affect my school? But then you see these horrific stories of so many athletes that are like committing suicide, and like, sorry, you might want to put a little trigger warning, but like it's like, you know, it's these there's no conversation around it, and there's not a lot of resources for they're growing, but there's not a lot of resources for student athletes, and like the, you know, everybody goes through mental health crises, but athletes are expected to push this aside to perform,
and to like put their head down and stay strong. And like the athletes do have some, like, and especially college athletes, like the strongest mentalities I've ever seen. But like you saying with your anxiety or certain things, like just because the problem's there, you're not doing anything about it, it's not going to go away. And also, like, unfortunately, your athletic career ends, and then you have to like step into the real world and go, and kind of start a career, and then that just brings on a whole new pile of responsibilities. But that's still that, like, mental health or anxiety or whatever is going on is still there. And like I always talk about, and like sometimes for me, like in therapy, like it's the only hour of the week I talk about it. Like I talk about my dad and what happened, and like, but at least I'm talking about it because I could go a whole year and a half and not say a word about it, and that would be bad for everyone around me. Everyone involved. It would not be good. And so, oh my God. And I talked a lot about, on the episode before this, we talked a lot about therapy and how just like
everyone should be in therapy.
I just like, if you want to do it. Like just talk about it.
I fully believe that everybody should be in therapy because there's just not enough conversation about, like, you know, taking the time to like work through your stuff, because if you do, then it makes you just a better person to be around. Just it's beneficial. And
you realize a lot of things about yourself, and like, oh wow, I didn't realize that had an effect on me. But like that's why I am the way that I am. So it's very interesting, especially for a student athlete. Definitely. Well, Maze, anything else? The floor is yours that you want to touch on, talk about. That's what I've got. But
I mean, that's like, I feel like we covered a lot, but I really think that first of all, appreciate you taking the time to listen to my water polo journey.
Oh, you know I love the water polo journey. It's my favorite one.
But, you know, just stream our Harvard games.
Tell them the time, the place where to watch. They need information.
Oh my gosh, it's on. I don't know the time. I haven't been able to think about it that far in advance.
Well, you can tell it to me. I'll put it in the caption where you can stream Maisie McPherson playing Harvard.
But I mean, thanks for talking about my journey. It's still going.
It's still going. Maybe we'll have you on. Maybe we'll have a it's not a prequel, a sequel, not a prequel, a sequel. Very good. I would love to have you on again. See where you progress. Maybe in 2 years, year and a half, when you're done, next step of your life, water polo is no longer a part of that. Maybe.
It's definitely.
It's definitely not.
I'm hanging up the cap.
Hanging up the cap.
I've already got two.
That's another transition. That's another pile of shit.
I don't want to think about it.
Well, we won't think about it right now. We'll think about it, you know, when the time comes.
Thanks for having me.
Oh man, Maze, thank you so much for being on here. I love this like new perspective and talking about like something, a different kind of shit that people are experiencing. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. This was my beautiful, incredible guest, Maisie McPherson. Tune in for episode 4? Episode 5, hopefully next week. Thank you all so much. Goodbye.
Bye.